Hey there friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I've got another Remnant 2 video for you guys as I continue to make builds with the Invoker archetype and other archetypes as the secondary. It's been a ton of fun, and this might be one of my favorite, I'm not sure yet, but it is a blast to use. It is a melee tank spin to win build that I've very much been enjoying, using one of my new favorite weapons that you definitely have to build into, but once you do, it's hilarious in my opinion. So let me jump into it. First off, I am using the Way of Kaela. I considered using Ladusa, but slowing down enemies and also getting haste as well helps out a lot with this build in my opinion. I do like those, plus the lightning strikes. The whole skill is just very good, so I'm going to stick to that one. And then I'm also using Juggernaut, really leaning into melee damage as well as Bulwark plus melee speed. All of that works out very well, so that's the combination. Then I am, with Strongback, going to be using the Lado Mark helmet. That works out very well, be extra tanky. I am using the Shielded Heart. Now I'll explain why in a little bit as I go through how to use this build, but having a shield at the beginning of combat is very important, and also if you ever get into trouble, because you can get your health back with this build, but it's hard to stay alive if you lose a shield or your bulwark stacks. Also, once you use your relic, if you do close enough to the enemies, you'll get 2 additional stacks of bulwark as well, which is very nice. Now, I'm using the Sparkfire shotgun. This is just an applicator for my mod. I am using Heatwave and Spellweaver for this one as my mutator. Again, I'm going to, with this build, be focusing on melee, so I want some passive mods that I can just pop and then proceed with the rest of my interactions. I'm also using, you can use any primary and secondary you want. You don't have to use Sparkfire shotgun or the tech if you don't want to. It's just what I use. Ring of Spears is very good with this build because it scales off of melee damage as well, and plus it's a passive one, so you can just pop it and just go to town. So it's essentially like you're spinning your melee weapon and spinning the Ring of Spears at the same time. Very effective. I'm also using feedback. Again, I want to generate as much mod power and mod damage as possible. But the star of the show is going to be the Mirage. This thing is hilarious. Essentially, you hold down the charge attack, you're just going to be consistently spinning the weapon above your head. It is awesome. Plus, you generate the Cyclone, so you're exposing enemies, pulling them into you, and also dealing extra damage. I have Reinvigorate as my mutator because it reduces the stamina cost of all charged melees by 50%. Again, because this is a charged melee all the time, having that reduced melee attack stamina cost is very good. Plus, melee charge attacks gain 20% additional damage and 10% crit chance. Now, again, I could swap this around for just extra damage, but having it at level 10 and getting that 20% is still very nice. Then I'm going to rock the Matriarch's Insignia, increases melee damage and causes all successful melee attacks to restore 10 stamina. So once I get spinning, as long as I'm consistently hitting enemies, I am just fully recharging my stamina with everything that I have on. Then we've got the Thalos Eyelet. This grants an additional stack of Bulwark, plus I can get 6 stacks instead of 5, and I'm going to increase stamina regen with this as well. Very nice combination overall, and just, again, leading me to be extra tanky. Then we've got the Dying Ember to gain the 6% of base melee damage as lifesteal. This is huge because as I'm hitting enemies, I'm just regenerating health all the time as well. So even if you take some shots, if you will continue to make contact with your charged melees, you are going to just regen your life all the time. Once you pop your first relic, you probably won't have to pop another one the rest of combat unless you get into trouble, or the enemy like teleports away or something like that, and then you have to essentially redo the cycle. Now, you also want the Fey Warrior Ring. Increased melee damage is always huge. And then I went with Haymaker's Ring. I think there's might be some better combinations. There might be a ring that I'm missing here that might do better, like one that specifically focuses on enhanced damage when you have multiple stacks of Bulwark or something of that nature. But for now, this one's good enough, and I do think it is a solid option here just for increase base damage without having to do anything. Now, as far as how the rotation works for this build, essentially you are going to pop your relic. You are going to feel very weak without having that shield initially because you aren't generating any bulwark stacks really. If you can pop your relic near enemies as well to get those 2 additional stacks, that's huge. And then once you pop your Juggernaut ability, that's when you'll really start to feel extra tanky. So essentially, you will pop your relic, pop your Way of Keula, and then use your Challenger ability, and then finally you are going to use your 2 mods. You can use one of them if you want at a time to kind of space them out, or you can just pop both of them at the same time if you're trying to do as much damage as possible in as little time. Pop both of those and then just start spinning once you get near the enemies. Again, it's a lot of setup as you're popping everything before you jump into combat, but there's plenty of cooldown on that, so that way once you start doing it, once you start spinning your weapon, it's set it and forget it at that point. You're just going to do a bunch of damage. And again, the cycle is very easy once you have the damage rolling, and if an enemy moves away from you, that's the perfect time to then repop your relic, pop your mods, maybe another Keula as well, and then just refresh and restart once again. It is a very fun little combination, and feeling so tanky is always great because it allows you to really take the stress off your teammates if you are in there with a group on co-op, but also if you are just playing by yourself and you're basically just wandering around, you can aggro a bunch of enemies at a time, suck them into you, and then just do a ton of damage and just eliminate them very, very quickly. And then you can continue exploring without necessarily having to worry about it. Certain bosses, this thing is very effective and very fun. There's obviously going to be certain modifiers, certain flying bosses, as I mentioned earlier, where this build is not going to be super effective, unfortunately. It's not going to be completely useless. You can adjust things, but really, it's not going to be the way to go against something like Annihilation or anything of that nature. However, for 90% of the game, this works out really, really well, and I absolutely recommend trying it out, seeing how much you enjoy it, and seeing if you have as much fun with it as I did. I think when I first saw a spin to win build with the Mirage, I wanted to make my own so bad, and I really don't use Challenger often enough, so this was a great opportunity to do so. As far as the traits that I have, I'm going to run, you'll see it early in the video, Fortify, Vigor, Endurance, Spirit, Expertise, Arcane Strike, Bloodstream, Dark Pact, and then Recovery. This is to enhance my gray health, but also the main key is Arcane Strike, because you're going to try to generate as much mod power as possible, so that way you can just continuously use your mod skills once you're no longer spinning to win. So anyway, I enjoyed this build. I hope you did too. If there's any changes you would make, let me know in the comments below. Anything that might make this better. I could replace one of the rings for sure, but the Mirage is the start of the show for sure. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Remnant 2 content from me going forward. My name is Jopa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.